Please subscribe, click the bell, ding the dong, bing the bong, all that great stuff. This, in my opinion, a physical representation of string theory. It's the idea that time is like a line from a beginning, which we would consider to be the past, all the way to an ending, which we would consider to be the future. And we exist basically somewhere on the line of time or timeline. And in that timeline is also space. We read from left to right. So left would be the beginning, right would be the end. As you make different decisions, you can actually create an alternate timeline. So if you went to work today, that would be like the timeline that you're on. There's a version of yourself that did not go to work, which would be an alternate timeline. And these timelines get created automatically. We don't really have any control. We are fourth dimensional beings where we see things linearly. We see things in 3D, height, weight, width, but we can also perceive time. And in Jade's home was representation of different timelines. Some of them are connected where you went to work, you're planning on going to work, you went to work on this one, you didn't go to work, and then created an alternate timeline. You're always, as far as when you're in the timeline, you can only go forward. You can't go backwards in time, and you can't go forwards in time at a rate that you want to. It's pretty much everything is predetermined. When Boyd and Kenny came into the home, they saw Jade on the ground with the book right there in his hand. He's looking at all the different timelines or the different strings, which is associated with string theory. Later on, he balls it all up. Him balling it up, this ball or his fist represents Farawayville, and Farawayville was created and has the ability to connect all different timelines together. And that would be, in my opinion, the reason why Farawayville exists. And so while you're on the timeline, you're driving your vehicle and then you go into a portal and you go into Farawayville, into this Nexus area where all the timelines are connected. And so inside the Nexus, time does not exist, which is why the clocks are not moving. Trees do not age because time does not exist inside this Nexus place, also known as Farawayville. However, they're now experiencing weather change. The forest is moving and things are dying. Even the soil is going bad. So something's happening to the Nexus area or Farawayville to where now time is affecting everything, which I believe is in a rapid rate, which is why the soil is not good. The reason why I say the boy in white more than likely is a 10th dimensional being is because he has the ability to perceive time and space from the outside looking in, similar to how we're looking at Jade right now, bird's eye view of him with the fist balled up. The fist represents the Nexus area or Farawayville. A 10th dimensional being would be able to see all of these strings at once. As far as the timeline from start to finish, they'd be able to see everything. They would be able to perceive every possibility as far as action or inaction. The 10th dimension is a concept in string theory that refers to the point where everything possible and imaginable is covered. Meaning, if you're a 10th dimensional being, you can see everything that could happen and will happen. Everything is determined already. There really isn't free will, but there is free will in that as you're making choices, you're creating other timelines. So it's kind of like both of a determinism and free will at the same time when you're 10th dimensional, because everything that can happen and could happen, you're able to see it, which everything is determined, but more lines will be created as people make choices, i.e. the idea of free will. It's considered the natural limit of what humans can conceive in terms of dimensions. In superstring theory, space-time is 10th dimensional. String theory is an attempt to reconcile the standard model of particle physics with the existence of gravity. Particles are traveling from one point in a timeline to another, or one timeline to another timeline, connecting them together. And if, in theory, if we can determine how the particles are doing this, then we can have it to where we actually could travel backwards and forwards in time, travel to different timelines, and even be able to see or experience everything that is possible and even affected. Is to be able to somewhat go from being passengers in time to be able to control it. So I believe that the boy in white has the ability to see everything that has happened and could happen. And that's the reason why he pops in and tells Victor and Julie, hey, go in here to escape from the creatures. And that was season 1 when the creatures got into Colony House thanks to Jasmine manipulating Kevin. The boy in white was able to see all different possibilities and knew if I pop in at this time and tell Victor and Julie to go into this faraway tree, the effects of that I want to happen will happen. So the boy in white popping in to Farawayville from different timelines, or maybe even his timeline in the future, he's popping in, he sees the possibility of what could happen if he acts or doesn't act, and he's doing things like being in the right place at the right time to get Tabitha's attention, leading her and then disappearing outside of that timeline because he was able to see the possibility of him getting her attention and disappearing on her like that would have her go to the Catholic Church to confess. The priest would ask about her son. She would look at the lunchbox, look inside the lunchbox, see the address, and go to Victor's home. Like, in other words, the boy in white is orchestrating different things to have a particular outcome happen. And the reason why I think that someone like him, who in my opinion is a 10th dimensional being, the reason why he is even bothering to go into Farawayville, popping in, telling people to do this and do that, but he's not interacting with them completely, is because the engagement that he's doing is not too much, but just enough to have a particular outcome. Imagine a choose your own adventure book. With a choose your own adventure book, you're given a story. And at one part of the story, it'll give you options. If you do this particular action, it will have a particular outcome. And in the book, it'll say, if you choose to go in the cave, go to page 56. If you choose to stay and fight, go to page 5. So with the choose your own adventure book, you can kind of see all the outcomes and possibilities to get a determined outcome. So you can never really just quote unquote lose, because you could always go to a particular point in the story based off your outcome. And if you don't like the ending, you could just flip the pages back and go backwards in time, so to speak, make a different choice. And now you have a different outcome. He can see what will happen if he chooses to act or not act. And he more than likely has the ability to go backwards in time and make a different choice for a different outcome.
Are these the same ones from your dream?
It's not just the stones, it's everything. It's how it feels. I still remember the fear when I was running. I started over there and came to hide behind the rocks.
Which one?
This one.
And then what?
Whatever was making everyone scream was on the other side of this rock. And I would look up and...
What?
I would wake up every single time.
Okay, let's say you actually did see this place before we came here.
Yeah, like Miranda did.
How does that help?
Maybe Aristotle got it wrong. Free will and determinism. Miranda said she was chosen, right? If seeing this place, visions, dreams, if that's the proof, and you saw this place as a child, you never really had a chance, did you?
What do you mean?
If fate exists, if you were destined to come to this place since you were a child, in one way or another, you were always going to come to that tree in the road.
So determinism is the idea that all events, including human actions, are caused by previous conditions and are therefore inevitable. Determinism suggests that humans cannot decide or act otherwise than they do. The deity that you serve and worship and study, that deity knows everything that could happen and will happen, and everything is predetermined. Also known as
omniscience.
Means that there's no point in believing that you have control over your life because God already knows what's going to happen, and that the end or revelation is going to come. Everything's already predetermined. To a certain extent, you still have free will because you can choose to, let's say, follow God or choose not to. But the deity already knows what choice that you're going to make anyway. So it's almost like if you're going to quote unquote sin, you're going to sin no matter what. There is no really changing anything. If there's an idea of free will is the idea that humans have some choice in how they act and are self-determined. For example, people can make a free choice as to whether to commit a crime or not. You have like a non-choice choice. So you have the free will to go to work or not go to work, but you're only confined to a set number of choices. Either you're going to work or not going to work. There is no third choice as far as in determinism. So it's kind of like the illusion of free will and determinism. Whereas in the idea of free will, you do have the ability to choose whatever you want to choose, and you're self-determined. There's no higher power that's playing puppet master, having you do stuff in a free will way of thinking. We live in a free will world where if you want to do good, you can do good. If you want to do bad, you can do bad. Everything's not determined. But looking at it from a 10th dimensional being standpoint, instead of looking at it as it being determinism or free will, there's both. In that if you make a choice, or you didn't make a choice, or there's a possibility of choices, that creates timelines. So every choice that could happen is a timeline. A timeline gets created. Everything that didn't happen, a timeline is created. Timelines are being created all willy-nilly. There's no way to really control it. Farawayville, in my opinion, was created so that all the different timelines and possibilities and realities and multiverse gets connected together in one Nexus area, Farawayville, so that you could use Farawayville as a Nexus area to go to different timelines and different possibilities. Instead of playing the lottery and you play one set of numbers on one timeline, you can go to this Nexus event or Nexus area, and you can go to a different timeline where you play different lottery numbers and possibly one and get some of that money. Or you're able to go on one part of your timeline. You want to play the lottery, you go forward in time, find out what the winning numbers are, go backwards in time to the actual past using Farawayville, and you can actually win some money. To me, that's kind of like the whole purpose of Farawayville. So with the boy in white, in my opinion, being a 10th dimensional being, he has the ability to go in and out of timelines. That's the reason why whenever you see him, he's not really having a full conversation. He's doing enough to enact a particular outcome because he can see all different possible realities. He's watching and he picks and chooses when he intervenes, when he wants to have a particular outcome, which is why when Tabitha's coming out of the hospital and she's confused as to where she's at, what happened, how she escaped Farawayville, the boy in white signaled for her to come follow him because he was able to see all the different strings or timelines at once to determine if I lead her and disappear, she's going to wander into the Catholic Church, have the conversation with the priest, and then look in the lunchbox and then go to Victor's home. Same way the boy in white appeared to Sarah while it was raining in the forest. He intervened, told them to go into the faraway tree. Sarah went back to the basement and interacted with Kenny later on. Boyd went to the bottom of that like well and then interacted with Martin. In the same way, the boy in white doesn't really talk to people all the time. He just kind of gives like a small interaction and then leaves. The boy in white as a 10th dimensional being involving himself in different points of time to get a particular outcome.
The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera.